All right, welcome
Oh,
everyone.
hold on.
Okay.
We're good to go.
All right, welcome everyone. I hope everyone's doing well and staying warm today. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel discussion, Careers, the City of Norman, Stories from Black Perspectives. We're so excited about this opportunity to just have conversation and dialogue around personal stories from several of our City of Norman team members, and hope that that you're able to take away just some personal motivation or some personal just thoughts that give you a lens behind the curtain of what it's like to develop a career at the City of Norman, and also just from these individuals just life and stories that they have to share. um, we are excited to do this also in part of our Black History Month celebration, and that ability to show a light on successful and just real leaders in our city. And so, with that, again, hoping that it imparts some motivation, some excitement around opportunities, which we are happy to share. Um, Mayor Clark had the vision for this event, and so we definitely want to thank her, and she'll be leading the discussion on. So thank you for having us here, and I will hand it off to her so she can share with the rest of the panel.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. And I don't know if you introduced yourself, but you're still a relatively new position. This is Cynthia Allen, our Chief Diversity and Equity Officer. And we've already seen, I think, work on the diversity issues. And you've been very, very busy in the 30 days that you've had the job. And we're so excited to have you be a part of the team. And I appreciate all that you're doing already. And I look forward to working with you more. So, and to our staff at home, thank you as well, because it's a snow day, if you hadn't noticed. I hope everyone's staying warm out there, conserving as much power as you can safely, and preparing for round 2, which will start tomorrow afternoon. But tonight, we're going to talk to 4 of our staff members specifically about their experiences with the City of Norman. Thank you all for joining us again, especially on your snow day, that you're sharing some of it. Well, some of you, as you can see, Mr. Hardiman and Deputy Chief Jackson are actually at work. So the city's work never stops, everyone. That's right. And we're very lucky to have the best staff in the state of Oklahoma. But I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I've been going alphabetically by your last name. So Mr. Francisco, why don't you kick us off?
Good evening. I'm Anthony Francisco, the Finance Director.
Rhonda, you're on mute.
Good evening. I'm Rhonda Guerrero, the Court Administrator.
I'm Steve Hardiman, the Plant Manager, Water Reclamation.
Ricky Jackson, the Deputy Chief of the Norman Police Department.
All right. Well, again, thank you guys for joining us. I really appreciate it. I've been excited for this all week. So let's just dive in with some questions. How did you get started at the City of Norman? And was there something specific about Norman that attracted you? And also, how long have you worked here total? Rhonda, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, I was working for an attorney in Norman, and I needed benefits. I wanted to look at a retirement package. And I was 22. I remember my mother telling me, you need to get your own insurance. So back then I looked in the paper. You have to remember, I've been at the city for almost 31 years. So I remember looking in the paper, and there was an opening at the city municipal court. I already worked for an attorney, so I thought that coincided very well. Applied at the municipal court, and 31 years later, I'm still here. Oh,
Steve.
So I had considered a job with the city of Norman after coming out the Air Force. I was out the Air Force and married with a child on the way, and I had I was looking for a lifetime career and didn't really know where I wanted to be. But I had an aunt that worked for the city of Norman, and I visited her and around the city complex and stuff for years before I decided to apply for a job with the city. So that's kind of how I got started here. She told me about a job at line maintenance, and then I applied and got the job. So 37 years later, I'm still here.
Right on. Okay. Deputy Chief.
Well, I was still in college when I decided to start a career in law enforcement, and I put in for a number of agencies across the metro. I was at the University of Oklahoma, so of course OU and Norman PD were two of my choices. It just so happened that Norman hired first, and so I went to the Norman Police Academy. Liked it. My original plan was to start out in the police department, then go federal at the FBI. But when I talked to my peers and friends that work for the Bureau, and my experience with what they did for the Bureau, I realized that the police department was a better fit for me. I was able to deliver the type of service to the community that I wanted to deliver much more effectively through a local municipal police department. So I stayed, and here I am going on my 36th year at the City of Norman, Norman Police Department.
Anthony.
It's kind of weird to say. I guess I'm the youngest guy here. I've only been working for the city for 23 years, but I've been working for the city for a lot longer than that. I actually came out of grad school at Syracuse and went to work for the city of Kansas City, Missouri. Then I worked for the city of Oklahoma City for 9 years. Then I went to the city of Seattle for 4 years. And Seattle is a strong mayor city. And so kind of their upper level administration turns over whenever there's a new mayor elected. So I was brought in by the mayor, Norm Rice, with a whole team of new people that he was bringing in. I thought, and we all thought, that he'd be there for at least 2 terms, but he was only there for 1 term. So after his 4-year term ended, we were turning over. And so I had to find a job, and grew up in Oklahoma City. I started looking for jobs back here. I actually turned down the job at Oklahoma State University. And there was an advertisement for the finance director job with the city of Norman in the Government Finance Officers Administration newsletter. As Rhonda said, we kind of had these back channel ways of finding jobs back then. Everything's online now, but it wasn't back then. So I applied for the job through the GFOA newsletter. I was interviewed by the city manager then, Ron Wood, and I've been here for 23 years since.
Right on. Okay. Well, was there any special preparation or training that you had to have for this career? Start with Steve.
A lot of it when I got to the city was pretty much on the job training. We've had different licenses we had to get in order to be in the water, wastewater industry. So I went to school at Rose State College, a couple other places to get those licenses. And to go into management, you had to have all 8 licenses, which are the top licenses. And so I went to school for a while and got all those licenses. Actually, before I actually started into getting the job I got now. I wanted to make sure I had all that before I started my career. So I started management career. So it wouldn't be a question if I have it or not, because a lot of times they put on job descriptions, you can get the license within 6 months or something like that, but I already had it. So I didn't have to worry about that part of it. So some of the things that, attracted me to Norman, because my aunt lived here, and being here at OU back in the 80s, the Marcus Dupree and William Tisdale days, I was in Norman quite a bit. So, and I heard about Norman Public Schools and the fact that they had a music program for kids. And I wanted my future daughters to be able to do violin and all that good stuff they wanted to.
Did they end up playing the violin?
Yes, both of them.
Okay.
One paid
All
the
right.
violin, one paid the viola.
Awesome. I needed a success story with that one. Thank you. All right. Ricky.
Yes, one of the requirements to be a police officer at that time in Norman, you had to have 60 credit hours of college. And so I had had an associate's degree in corrections. And then I finished up my bachelor's of arts degree in criminal justice at OU while I was employed at the Norman Police Department. But prior to actually being employed, I had to go to an academy, which was 16 weeks in length back then. Now our academy is somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 weeks. And I also had to go through a 14 weeks of field training with a senior officer. So that is the basic requirements that I needed to have to be a police officer, and also pass a couple of psychological examinations to make sure we were fit for the job. So that was really the only requirements that I had to have prior to being hired and being active on the streets solo.
Okay. And then more trainings later on available to you. I believe that Norman has a very high amount of officers who have that. Is it CIT, crisis intervention training?
I have thousands of hours of additional training that we have to maintain to be accredited as law enforcement officers in the state of Oklahoma. And in Norman, of course, we have a higher requirement for the city. So.
Okay. And Steve, do you have ongoing certifications in your position?
Yes, we have quite a bit of hours that we have to go to every year. So conferences, workshops, things of that sort, or, over the Rose State College is how you get those hours to continue to keep your license.
So is that only at Rose State, or is it also at Moore Norman?
No, it's usually at Rose State. Accurate puts on some of those classes, but mostly Rose State.
Okay. All right. Rhonda.
I think when I applied, I believe you only had to have a high school diploma, but of course you have to have good communication skills. I went to college at Southwestern and was pursuing a business degree, which helped me with typing, data entry. But I think when you become an entry-level clerk, it takes about 2 years to get really trained at the court. You have to be knowledgeable about of course, city ordinances, state statute. So it just takes a long time to get fully trained at the court. We do have a lot of longevity at the court. Before I became a department head, I had 17 years really to be prepared, because I worked out at the front office for 17 years, worked in every position before I became a supervisor. But then we also have training through the Court Clerks Association through the state. I was court clerk certified for many years before I even applied to management level. I was lucky after I became department head that our prior city manager, Steve Lewis, really took me under his wing, and I was able to go through Leadership Norman. I sat on lots of different boards to get involved in the community. Mary Abbott House, NAIC, which is now the Virtue Center. So I really got involved with the community, which I wasn't able to do that when I worked out in the front. And at a management level, it was nice to get to be around the community and provide some service, sit on those boards. So that really helped me grow.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your service. Anthony, you're back.
Yeah, so that was strange. My lights blinked just before my Wi-Fi must have gone on the blink. So if you would, Steve was talking at the time that my lights blinked and I went out. So if you would repeat the question.
Yeah. So is there any special preparation that you had to take or training for your career?
Yeah, okay. So I went to University of Oklahoma, and I was in school to become a city planner. I wanted to be the Jane Hudson. But then Ronald Reagan got elected and they stopped hiring city planners. So in my undergraduate degree, I had an advisor who advised me to diversify. And I took the GRE core test for graduate school, and I did pretty well on the math part. So I diversified into public finance. And I went to graduate school at Syracuse in public finance, and then that's kind of I got into this path. I would say when I say I did okay on the math part, that would be my advice to young people is don't be afraid of the math. To me, math is the one thing that no prejudice can interfere with. Math is the only thing that's like factual, and they can't take that away from you. 2 + 2 is 4. That's just a fact. And if you can talk about that and whatever you're talking about that you can back up with figures and facts, you're unassailable. So that's why, yeah, I'm kind of proud that I handled the money. And I know that when the mayor first got elected, she was very excited when I brought her into my office to sign the checks. Well, I want you to know, Mayor, that I had that same feeling the first time that I signed the checks for the city of Norman. And that's a really big deal to be handling the money and signing the checks and that sort of thing. But you cannot do that unless you have that background in the quantitative stuff, the math stuff.
All right. Now that's
Hey,
awesome.
Anthony, sorry to interrupt there, but Anthony, what would you say was your what prepped you, as you were coming up into that math strength?
Interesting. I
That's
never
okay.
really liked math, but I had a really good high school algebra teacher. Mr. Blackman was his name. And he really schooled us on just the facts and quadratic equations and all of that sort of thing. But again, what you really have to be grounded in is the basic add, subtraction, multiplication, and division. I had a really good 4th grade teacher who drilled the math, 4 times 4 is 16, read those times tables. If you memorize those times tables 1 through 12, that's going to serve you for the rest of your life. And I do that sort of thing every day. And again, that's what I would just encourage people to not be afraid of the math.
Well, Anthony, you've probably heard me say many a time, I went to law school, not math school. So I'm just not there where you're at. I'm glad you're at where you are, though. So, and I love that you knew you wanted to work in city government like from the beginning, which is pretty cool. All right. So in what ways have you all felt supported throughout your career by the city of Norman? And we'll start with Ricky.
Okay. Wow, that's a good question. I've had lots of positive relationships here working for the city, both at the police department and other departments. And I never had a situation where someone maliciously tried to come out and do harmful things for me. As a matter of fact, as a young officer, I was supported by a sergeant that was a little bit gruff around the edges. And I remember him encouraging me to put in for supervisory positions as soon as I could. And so I did. And I remember going and sitting on my board for a sergeant back then. And I had about all of 3 years on. And that sergeant was on my board. And I put in, I remember one of the questions asked about, what did I hope to bring to the job or position? And I said, you know what, guys, I'm enjoying what I'm doing in patrol, and I just really want to go through the process to kind of get an idea what it's like. So, so right now I'm really kind of enjoying what I'm doing and not really want to get into the supervisory role. And so, of course, understandably, I didn't get the position. And later, I talked to that sergeant, because I can see his face kind of drop over my board. And I says, so, give me some pointers, some things. And he stopped me, says, never put in for anything unless you're ready to do it for you, not for someone else. So in a few years, when you're ready to actually put in for the position, put in for the position. Then you'll know when you're ready. No one can tell you when you're ready. And that was the first bit of support I had gotten as a new officer. I took his words to heart. And the next time I put in for the position, I was ready. I really wanted the position. And for different reasons than I did as a 3-year officer. So that was valued information, and I carry that with me today.
Yeah, okay. Steve.
So a lot of my support starts with my faith in Jesus Christ. That's where it starts, because I don't think he's got me here in the city of Norman for no reason. He opened doors, and he's closed a few with the city to get me where I am now. Because years ago, I put in for a job as a lab tech here at the plant, and the guy beat me out of that job less than a half a point. And so I was pretty upset because I really wanted to do that. But, you know, if I'd have took that job, I wouldn't be where I am today. So he closed that door to work so I could be where I am. But he also put people in my path here that really cared about the employees here. Ralph Arnett and Michael Graves, when they were here, if you really want to know how to do this job, treat wastewater, then both of those guys was willing to teach you. Michael Graves had a saying, if you want to know your job, come after me. So I was one of those that came after him, asking him questions about everything. And so he abruptly left the city because I knew he wasn't going to be here long. He was here about 4.5 years and then he left. And so that gave me the skills and things I needed to do what I'm doing now, because there was actually nobody available to take over his position. And so he asked Ralph and a couple others to give me a chance to do it. And so, you know, that support, because support of my wife, putting up with my craziness, all I want to do, and going back to school at the age of 40, doing that kind of stuff. And, you know, and my mom and all she instilled in me all these years about being the best person you can be, and her determination that she always had for whatever she did. She went back to school to get her degree in culinary arts at the age of 62, and she moved to Phoenix, Arizona to do that. We thought she was crazy, but she moved to Phoenix, Arizona, stayed there for 2 years, and graduated cordon bleu, and got her degree in culinary arts. And then that was a huge inspiration for a lot of us in the family. So, you know, all those family members that believed in me and what I was doing, and, you know, and my family, my girls sharing the Wi-Fi with me when I needed it, things of that sort. Because, you know, back then you didn't have no Wi-Fi. You had the dial-up connection. So they had it during the day, I had it at night. So that was a lot of what got me where I am today as far as support.
Awesome. Thank you. It is funny how timing can really make a difference. So some opportunities are just meant for you based on how it happened. So cool. That's awesome. Anthony.
Well, there's a lot of people that I could talk about that have been supportive with the city of Norman, but I want to talk a little bit about the folks on this panel. They've been very supportive of me and of each other, kind of behind the scenes, we Black folks in management. And this is to Steve's credit. He would get us together for lunch once a month, and we would just talk about things going on with the city of Norman, and problems we were having with certain people, and all sorts of things like that. But just know, Steve, that, you know, Rick Knighton would join us. I mean, it was just very supportive, just to talk to each other and find out what was going on. And Rhonda would be the only female there, but she held her own, and it was just a lot of fun. And I look forward to getting back to doing that.
Yeah, we can do that again.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that existed. Cool. Okay. Rhonda.
Well, I agree with Anthony. I say the same thing. This panel, my colleagues right here, they're also my friends. And but I've been very blessed. I've had a lot of support. As soon as I was promoted to a department head, the whole management team, everybody on there reached out to me. I work really close with Norman PD and close with legal. I mean, I work with them every day. So they've just been there for me, helped me grow. If I have a question, I have no problem picking up that phone, and I know everyone on this panel, everybody on the management team, they'll be there for me. So I feel very grateful because I've been very supported.
Awesome. Okay. That warms my heart to know that you were getting support out there. All right. I want to pivot a little bit and talk more about your backgrounds. So where'd you guys grow up? Where are you from? I know Anthony mentioned he's from Oklahoma City, but Rhonda.
Okay, I grew up in Woodward, Oklahoma, very small. Um, Woodward does not have a lot of diversity. I wanted to say a little bit about my background. I'm half Black, and my mother, I was raised by a single mother who is white and Native American. So, which is funny now because now I'm married. My personal life now, I'm married to a Hispanic man. So my family is very diverse. I have one thing I have to say is I'm an identical twin, very close with my twin sister, and she's married to a twin who is African American. So I have a very diverse family. But when you grow up in Woodward, thank God I had my twin. It was just really nice when I went off to college just to see more people that look like me. And I had a great childhood in Woodward, but I think, you think where you just your upbringing, you think of like how was I treated? Everything was good growing up, but it was just nice when I went off to college just to see more of a diversity, more people that different races.
Okay. Anthony.
So yes, I did grow up in Oklahoma City. My background is, education was a big part of my life growing up. Music was a big part of my life growing up. I tell people I'm a frustrated musician. This finance stuff is just paying the bills, but really what I want to be is a sax player in a smoky jazz club, but I guess, my background again was to get that education and to get into this career. But I grew up in Northeast Oklahoma City, Black neighborhood, and I'm a child of busing. So I went to K through 6 elementary school, segregated all Black school, all Black neighborhood. And we went through a big time culture shock in 1972 when busing started, and we went to what was then called Hoover. Interestingly, they don't call the school Hoover anymore because it was identified with the Hoover Crips. And so they changed the name of the school. But it was just a very weird time because it's way on the other side of town. So here we are, 12, 13-year-old kids being bused to what we thought at the time was like we were going to a different state. And we were scared to death. And the weirdest thing is that the white people were scared to death. And they didn't know that we were scared to death. And it was a very weird time. I look back on that now. If you've seen the movie, Remember the Titans, and that scene from the movie and Remember the Titans when the moms are holding up the signs, go home and all of that, that was real life for us. And that shaped my life in a big way because integration for me, I think, was a good thing on the whole because, what you learned was, what I found out was that, I'm as smart as these kids. I can hang with these kids. And that was it's a big culture shock. It was and I think that was everybody in our neighborhood as we were riding back and forth on those buses would talk about that. I mean, and so it was a very influential time. But I mean, I could tell you all sorts of stories from my upbringing about high school. We had the first in-school cop in the state before the term school resource officer was invented. And the influences of that, I could tell you a lot of stories, but I won't take the time to do all of that. But just know that, I've lived a lot of things.
Thank you for sharing that. Steve.
Well, I can relate to Anthony because I grew up in Oklahoma City too, on the northeast side Oklahoma City, Parker State. Anthony probably know where that is, 36th and Kelly. And I was actually in the 3rd grade.
Yeah, we were scared of you all too, but I won't go into that.
We were, I was bused. It was the 3rd grade for me when it started. And of course, I'm a little kid. I'm, 6, 7 years old. And we're going from all the people that we know. It was like, going off to prison for us because nobody we knew on the other side of town. We went to Kaiser. And then I also went to Hoover. went to Hoover for a while, and then ended up at John Marshall. And there was a high school right down the street from us, Northeast High School. So we couldn't figure out as kids that we had to be sent to the other side of town and things like that. So, you know, the stories that he talked about, I can relate to that. My mom, I grew up with a single mom because my dad was murdered or killed when I was 9 months old. And then my mom was also pregnant with my sister at the time. So she was 20 years old. So, you know, losing your husband at 20 with a 9-month old and also a, child on the way, that was pretty devastating to her. But we didn't have much growing up with my grandparents. They helped us out. She wanted to be dependent and determined because a lot of people told her, you got Steve and you got a baby on the way. So we're going to take Steve and he will come live with us. And then, my other grandparents say once my sister is born, then they're going to take her. And my mom said, no, absolutely not. You're not taking my kids. So she worked 3-4 jobs trying to do what she can. And, she bought her first house when she was 26 on her own. And so I learned a lot from what I saw her do and my grandparents do. And also, since I didn't have a male influence in the house, she got me hooked up with one of my uncles named Edward Hardiman. And he was an educator. And he kind of the one that's got me started in education and things like that. So it was a good upbringing, but it was also a tough upbringing. But my mom made sure that we made it through. I remember when I was at Hoover, we had PE, and everybody had certain PE clothes with Hoover on them and all that. I didn't have that. So she went to work an extra job just so she could buy me those clothes so I can look like everyone else in the gym and not be outcast, because I was the only Black kid in that particular gym class. And I really didn't want to go because I didn't have the clothes. But she made it to where I could actually go and, be proud to be there. So it was a lot of going up, but, losing my dad, who I never knew. I have a picture of him. She finally gave me a picture of him to let me see what he looked like. And that's about all I know about him and what stories people told. But, she done a good job raising us and making sure. And when she saw us getting in trouble, we moved from northeast side to the southeast side of Oklahoma City, far away from trouble. And so I finished school at Dale City. And so she done all she could to make sure her kids, had the best of what she could give. And, I thank her for it today. I thank all the time for what she did, because that was tough. Because I was 17 when we moved. So I'm moving away from all my friends with no car and all that. And so she did a lot for us. But Anthony was talking about math in school. I need to tell you a story about OU. When I was at OU in the 80s, once I finished some of my undergraduate stuff, when I got accepted to the Price School of Business, my first class, I was excited because I got accepted to the business school. So my first class, I go to class, the professor looks at me and he tells me, and he looks at the class and say, if you don't understand day one of this math, you need to drop out now. And so I'm looking around and I'm the only Black student in class and he's looking straight at me. And so we started class. It was some type of college algebra or something, business something. And I couldn't understand it. And so after day one, day two, I tried to find help around the university to help me get through this class, and couldn't find no help. Because if you wasn't an athlete, then help as a regular student was hard to find. And it was tough. So it got so tough, I dropped out that class, and eventually that semester dropped out of OU. And didn't think about going back to school anymore. And I got this picture. I'm gonna see if I can show it. That's my high school graduation, right from high school graduation.
That is glorious. I love that. Anyone else got high school photos?
My family threw me a 40th birthday party. My mom showed me that picture and she said, son, what were you thinking when you were sitting there? I said, well, I was thinking about, having a career in finance. Anthony got my job, by the way, and going and having a good career. And she said, well, what happened to that dream? Because I didn't want to go back to school. So that night I decided to go back to school. And when I got home the next day, I had a flyer from the University of Phoenix. And so I graduated from the University of Phoenix with my bachelor's degree and master's degree. And so I put a deal on Facebook last week that talks about that, how she inspired me to go back to school. And of course, my wife, she put up with my craziness, me going to school for, this 6-year period, however long it took me to get through my master's. And I'm very proud of me going back to school because I wanted to make sure that my daughter was a junior at OU. And I said, I cannot let her out-graduate me. I have to set the example and graduate with my bachelor before she do, or I was going to be a failure. So I was going to fail again. So I didn't want to do that. So I went back, worked hard, up to 2, 3 in the morning, doing work, coming to work, all that, just so I get on the computer. And God made everything work out for me. So
Right on.
all my upbringing with my parents and grandparents and everything brought that forward. So I'm trying to do the same for my grandkids.
Well, that's wonderful. And then I have to tell you, I only hope that my boys talk about me the way that you talk about your mama. Oh man. Life goals. Okay. Ricky.
I guess to carry on the theme, I too am from the northeast side of Oklahoma City. I grew up in the W.J. Edwards edition. I'm sure Steve and Anthony is familiar with that edition. And to understand a little bit about W.J. Edwards, I won't go into tonight, but if you get a chance to Google him and see what he accomplished and why that edition exists, is something of noteworthy and worth telling. I grew up, went to school on the south side of Oklahoma City. I started out going to private schools downtown Oklahoma City. My first stint in private school was at St. Joseph Catholic School, which is where the Murrell building was. Before the Murrell building was St. Joseph. They tore it down and built the Murrell building. And then the bombing, of course, happened in the 1990s. So when I responded to the area to work the bombing site, the familiar landmarks to me just seemed kind of surreal, knowing I grew up in that particular area and everything was altered by this act of terrorism. But the third grade on, I went to private schools, St. Joseph, Sacred Heart, Mount St. Mary's. And the unique thing of it was my experience was that I lived on the east side, had lots of connection with the east side, family, friends, and so on and so forth. But I went to a white school on the south side. So I never quite fit in. I was too black, to be in the white school. And on the east side, I talked a little different. So I talk funny. So I wasn't quite black enough because of how I spoke on the east side. So I was kind of this no man's land. There was a lot of respect and a lot of fights, on both ends that I had to do coming up. My parents, both my mom and my dad, were very supportive of education. My father barely had a high school degree, but my mother had a nursing degree from OU. And so she pushed all of her kids to achieve higher and do better. When I was in elementary school, this is how I kind of got into private school, is that my brothers and I, we called, I guess, measles or chicken pox or whatever. I can't remember what childhood disease. So we're out of class for about 5 weeks. And my mom called and said, hey, we need to keep these young boys up in their classwork. So what homework can I assign them work from home to help them keep up and not get behind? Well, my mom was told, well, you don't have to worry about that. Come back in about 5 weeks and we'll catch them up. She says, there's no way you can catch them up after missing 5 weeks. So that's when she pulled us out of, public schools and put us in the private schools. And so that work ethic that I achieved from both my parents. Again, my father didn't have barely had a high school degree, but he was very passionate about his family, very supportive of his family. He wasn't a very big man. You know, you guys see him, I'm about 6'3", 240 pounds. My dad was about 5'6", 145 pounds, and my mom was about 5'4", 145 pounds. So how they produce these big kids, I have no idea. But but my father was a huge man as far as stature, how he fought for his sons and his daughters and his family and his family members. And you know, we tell lots of stories about little altercations that we had growing up. My father would jump out like he was 10 foot tall and confront some guy that was twice his size over his family. And so from him, I learned what it's like to be a man. I learned what it's like to take care of your family. I've learned what it's like to be responsible for others. I also learned from both my parents the service over self. And so those are the qualities I think that my parents passed on to all of their children, you know. And so and I think that's kind of why I got into law enforcement today, to kind of give some of that back to the community and instill some of those same values in those that I have the opportunity to come across in my daily life or my daily work life. So.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
if you don't mind, Mayor, I have to jump in real quick because I can't let all this Northeast representation be said and not jump in as well, because I'm a Northeast Viking. Went to high school at Northeast on 30th and Kelly. So we're right there. There's that connection there.
Well, it's all right, Rhonda. You and I can have our own team. Okay, well, there. Well, you mentioned, yeah, that's right. Well, some of you mentioned the challenges that you encountered growing up. What were some resources you used to get to where you are today? Like, was it a mentor? Was it programs you were involved in? What helped you to get to this point? Anthony?
Wow, there was a lot. There were people, role models that I had throughout the community, at school, at church, just people that I looked up to and people that my parents looked up to, that I never lacked for role models, for people that you know, that I could aspire to be like them. You know, one guy that I will talk about is an attorney named McKinley Rowan. And he was an elder in my church, and he spoke the King's English, and he wrote the King's English, and the King James Bible. And I mean, you know, and my father talked about how he strove to be like him. And so I would listen to him and I would listen to my father, and to the extent that I speak the King's English, that's where I got that from, is trying to want to be like them. So all sorts of role models that I could talk about that I had and that my parents had and that my parents were role models for me. But that's what I would point to, is just latch on to somebody, you know, watch what they do, see how they have succeeded, and take something from them. Because the good thing is that, you know, you can give away knowledge and not lose it. How cool is that?
It's deep. I like that. And mentorship matters. So for those of you watching, if you are a mentor, keep it up. And if you're not, share your time and talent. It helps immensely. Let's go, Rhonda.
The biggest influence on my life growing up, hands down, was my grandmother. Our grandmother helped raise my sister and I. Woodward it is a country town, but I can tell you that everybody was cheering on for the Ogden twins. We had lots of support. But my grandmother always told me, be kind. She said, welcome everybody and be a hard worker. And I mean, one thing about my work ethic is also from my mother too. But I always say my mother is an introvert, very quiet. My grandma was loud. That's me. My sister's loud. We love people. And that's how my grandma was. I mean, she loved to dance, and she just always had a positive attitude, and just always made me feel better all growing up. I mean, I could always go to her for anything. She passed away 8 years from yesterday, and she lived till she was 99 by herself. And she was ornery, but we miss her because, I mean, she was just a bright light.
See, that's what we'll be the grandma's girl club, because I too love and adore my grandma. Okay,
Yeah.
Ricky.
Like I stated earlier, my parents were huge supporters and mentors for me. But I have to say that one of the persons that was most influential and as far as awakening a sense of social consciousness in me was a cousin that came to live with us briefly while he was working on his master's at the University of Oklahoma. He was working on getting his master's in HR under Dr. Henderson. And I call him Cousin Mickey, and I usually tell this story about Cousin Mickey. Mickey was from St. Paul, Minnesota. And he had gotten his undergraduate degree at Langston, where he met my cousin and married her. They got married. But he lived with us for about a year and a half or so. And he would talk to me a lot, ask a lot of questions. For instance, he would ask me the question, why? I was a little fat kid, I was laying up in my bed in the summertime, under the air conditioning, eating cheese sandwiches, and totally oblivious to the rest of the world. And Mickey would kind of get me out of the bed, and he'd ask me some questions. He'd give me books to read, but he would always ask the questions why. And one of the questions he would ask is, hey, let me ask you a question, Rick. He says, why is everything black bad? I said, what do you mean, Cousin Mickey? And he says, well, think about it. The bad guy wears black, the good guy wears white. Black cats are bad luck, and on and on and on and on. I said, well, I don't know why. And so we would have these talks long into the night. And he would bring me books to read, books by James Baldwin, The Vanguard, which is the story of the Black Panther Party. We talked about Malcolm X, Dr. King, and on and on and on and on and on. And the more he asked the question why, the more I began to ask the question why. And that kind of has carried me throughout, not only as a young man, but also throughout my career. Whenever I see something I don't quite understand, I'll ask the question why. And when I speak to others that I'm trying to impart a little bit of knowledge to in regards to just things socially in general, and they would give me a particular scenario from their life experience and a certain belief, and I would ask them, well, why do you think it's that way? Make this just to stimulate the conversation, like Cousin Mickey stimulated the conversation in me. And to this day, because of his mentorship and the way he talked to me and asked this little fat kid questions as if my answers really mattered, gave me a sense of worth and a sense of social conscious awakening that I did not have prior to him moving into the home. And so I always give my props to Cousin Mickey, who's since passed away. But when it comes to who mentored and influenced me the most, it would be my parents and then Cousin Mickey. And so there's other stories I tell about Cousin Mickey that at some point at a later date, we'll go into that. He was really a fascinating individual. Didn't know a stranger, had a big smile for everyone. He's a very, very smart, cerebral individual, a thinker.
Okay, cool. Steve.
So some of mine is, of course, my mom, because she really taught me perseverance in whatever I do. Don't ever give up. When I was taking my Class A license for the city, I failed the first time. I failed the second time. And unfortunately, after the second time, a lot of people just give up. But I persevered. I stuck with it. It took me 7 times, but I got that license. And so, I got a lot of that from her. My mom, when I was a kid, had a boyfriend called, I don't remember his last name, but his first name was Roy. And he used to take us to church all the time. And so what he would do, every Saturday, religiously, we would go to TGNY. Anthony might remember TGNY on 36. We would go to TGNY and he would buy me shoe polish and we would shine my shoes. He would show me how to press a shirt and wear a tie to church every Sunday. And we would do that every single week. And after a while, I said, why in the world we got to do this every week? He said, because God deserves your best. It don't matter what it is, he deserves your best. and you always do your best for people. And, you know, that was 50 years ago, he taught me that lesson. And so that's just how I run my life. You know, God deserves my best, and I show my best to people. And I don't know where he is today. He's probably deceased by now, but you know, that always stuck with me to give my best in whatever I do and treat people with respect. And also my uncle, he really honed me in on education, because before I went to OU, I went to Connor State College for 2 years. I really wanted to go to Baycombe and another junior college, but they got shut down. So I had no idea where I was going to go to school. But my uncle, he was dean of students at Connor State in Warner, near Muskogee. And he got me started on my education. And he said, that is one thing they can never take away from you is your education. And if you want to make it, become an educated man, and you'll figure out the rest. And so, you know, those three people growing up, Roy, my mom, and Edward, is the ones that inspired me to be where I am today.
Okay. I wanted to throw in one about Black History Month, because that's kind of, we've upped our programming, if you will. You are a part of it. I hope we continue doing this panel. But what does Black History Month mean to you? And if you celebrate it, how do you do that? Anthony, let's start with you.
We celebrate Black history throughout the year. I had a conversation with a friend recently about, does it bother you that you know that they have this one Black History Month and it's the shortest month of the year, and does that bother you? And I'm like, no. I mean, you know, at least there is a time when Black history is kind of focused on for a little bit. So if it is only 1 month of the year, at least that piques folks' interest about Black history for the rest of the year. So I think that's good. So I have read all sorts of things. We have an extensive Black history library at home, and I just encourage everybody to study your history, because if you are an American, you have been shaped by Black history, and you have been influenced by Black people, and Black people's culture permeates the culture of this country, and you cannot get away from it, no matter how hard you may try. So yeah, history of America is very important, and you cannot separate Black history from American history.
Okay. Steve.
So one of the things, of course, I'm like Anthony, I don't like that they put it all in 1 month, because we celebrate throughout the year also. Now, during this time, my grandkids especially, you know, we'll let them know of different things and how people of color have contributed to our lives, you know, just like the cell phone. You know, every time they pick up the cell phone, that was created by a Black man, and several other, you know, just mundane things that we use every day, you know, just letting them see that history. And then we talk about voting rights, all those kind of things, and how important it is to vote, because I want them to know that now, so when they become the age, it wouldn't be an issue if they're going to vote. But, you know, last summer, we went to Tuskegee University in Alabama, and we got to get to see a lot of what went on there with with Booker T. Washington, and see his grave and all that, and just kind of do things as we can. We've seen all the Martin Luther King places throughout the country: Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Memphis, where he was killed. Let them see all that kind of stuff, because they read about this stuff in school, but I want them to see where it actually happens. And so I can talk about these things, and then they can see kind of how history is being written, with what's going on here, so they can actually know for themselves and see, oh, that's where he was killed, at the Lorraine Hotel. Oh, that's that's his monument. That's his church, things like that. So they've seen that, even though they're just 10 years old. And
That's
so
awesome.
stuff like that throughout the year as we get opportunities. You know, we close to something when we're in a state, we'll go visit. You know, just like Tuskegee University. We wasn't but 2 hours away, so we decided to go. and let them see things like that. I didn't know where Booker T. Washington was buried, but I didn't know he was buried there at the university, but we got to see his grave and talk about him, and several others that were buried there. So that's kind of how we do it.
That's awesome. I love the being able to visit the physical places. I think that makes it so much more real. So, and I need to take that tour. That sounds like a really neat
Because one
civil
time
rights tour, I believe.
they were talking about John F. Kennedy in school. I said, we'll just drive there. So one
Yeah.
Sunday we drove to Dallas, showed them around, showed them what happened. And so when they came back to school, they actually said, I've been there where I stood on the spot where he was killed, because they got it
Wow.
marked out and everything. So we
Right on.
need to, as parents, take those opportunities to, celebrate our history, because our history is rich.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that went on for us and others. So not just Black history, but like Anthony said, American history. What are we all about? So we teach all that.
Awesome. Okay. Ricky.
Well, I look forward to a time where we don't have to separate our history, because like Steve and Anthony said before, is that this is our history, U.S. history. And what gets me a little bit is that when I speak to folks, here at police department and abroad and other areas, we talk about things of history, issues of history, and they ask me questions, but why are things a certain way? I tell them, I give them an explanation. I said, but don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Research the history. This is our history. It's not just Black history, not just Latino history. It's not just Native history. This is what formed our country. And you need to know these things. And I look forward to where it is actually taught as a curriculum in class and not separated out, because the people that need to know this the most, they're not watching these documentaries and specials during Black History Month. I'll ask them, when they ask me a question, I say, well, this is the answer to this, or this is what I think. And they'll say, and I said, but do you know about any of these things? They said, well, no, I don't. I said, well, I'll tell you, if you don't know, every February, you get deluged with lots of historical facts about our contribution to the country, to the fabric of this country. They said, well, I don't watch that. I said, well, why not? Well, it doesn't apply to me. And I'm like, but surely it does. It does apply. U.S. history applies to all of us. And the ones that need it the most just flip right through the channels and never watch it. And yet they have questions. And so I would love for the day to where these things are addressed, in the schools, by the parents, by everyone else, so that from a young age, we are aware of these facts, and not as we're as adults now, and we're trying to explain these things to them. And the feeling is that, well, you're shoving these things down my throat because I don't need to know that because it doesn't apply to me. It just amazes and fascinates me. So I look for a day to where we no longer have to have February to discuss a part of American history that should be discussed throughout the school curriculum throughout the year, as Anthony said earlier.
I love your point about the people who need to learn, who need to watch these things, aren't the ones you're reaching. And that's an excellent point. Rhonda.
Well, I like to celebrate it with, family, but I think one person's been very instrumental in my life as far as learning more about Black history and Black culture, because the way I was brought up with my mother. I wasn't brought up with my father in the home. Is my brother-in-law. He's taken the time to, even as simple as watching a documentary, and then he explains it. We talk about things. We ask him questions. He's been wonderful influence on my kids, my nieces, his kids, and just constantly learning. I know I want to evolve. I know Anthony, Rick, they've been awesome to sit down and I can ask any question I want. And so I'm still learning, and I will continue to learn.
Okay. Last question. I want you to share your proudest moment in your career with the city of Norman. And then it's technically two questions I squeezed into one. And then what do you wish people knew about your career that many people don't? Okay, I don't know who wants to start. I know it's like a deep thought one, as you got to remember something. So I didn't want to, but somebody has to go. Rhonda, what about you? Oh, Ricky.
Well, I had my heater on. I only caught the first part of your question, not the second part of your question. So I get the first part, what part of the proudest moments. What was the second part of the question?
What is a part of your job that you wish people knew about that they often don't?
Okay. The first part of it, I'll say, is that what makes me proudest is when I, hear from officers that come in my office, or they send an email out and they talk about something positive they've done in the community, something that maybe they may have picked up from me or someone else that they respect at the agency, and then they go out into the community and do something that is selfless, service over self. And then the thing that I wish that people knew that about my job, and basically it's what we do at Norman Police Department. I'm not going to talk about police officers, police departments across the country, but I always will say specifically what I know about the Norman Police Department is that I have never worked with a finer group of individuals that truly, truly embrace service over self. When I read the things that they're doing in the community and to save lives when people are in crisis, and just, and I sent you an email, Mayor, just a few weeks ago about one incident of many that these guys do that I wish the citizen would know more of that, versus the things they see across the country that reflects police officers in a negative light. Now, I will say this, is this profession perfect? No, we have a long way to go and a lot of work to do, but I do know here there's a lot of guys that's in it to win it, and they're doing a lot of things right. And I wish our citizens and community was more aware of the positive impact that these guys and men and women are having with those in the community, our stakeholders in the community.
Well, your social media is fire. So Sarah does an amazing job, and I try and share that and push that message as well. So I appreciate you. Rhonda.
One of my proudest moments, of course, is being promoted to be a department head, but I'm proudest of court staff. I mean, we have a very small department, which is 11 full-time people, and we have 184 years of experience at municipal court. A lot of longevity. That means we have a lot of knowledge, and what they do, I mean, you're only as good as who works with you. They do a phenomenal job. They know their job, they're knowledgeable, and they provide a great service for the city of Norman. Because I've heard people say, oh, you work at municipal court. Well, I'm passionate about people. I work with all walks of life at municipal court. We are prepared to give out the best options to help people get through a difficult situation. So I do feel fulfilled because I'm helping somebody every day at work. And I love going to work. How many people can say that after 30 years? I enjoy my job. I love the people I work with, and I just feel very grateful. The city of Norman has been a blessing to me and my family.
Well, we are lucky to have you, Rhonda, so that feeling is mutual. Steve.
So I've been here, I'm in the city 37 years, 33 here at the plant. And all the years I was running around here, I would say to myself, man, I wonder what it's like to sit in that seat in that office and run this place. And I do that all the time. And I just said, I ain't no way I can do that. I see what they're doing. I just blew it off. And so my proudest moment when I actually got this job, because one thing I wanted to show the people that work here is how would Jesus Christ run a treatment facility? How would he love his people and bring them up to what we call give your job away, and promote people and make them enjoy their job and things like that. So that was my proudest moment, because I knew that I'd have the opportunity to change the culture here and how we do things. And, like the older employees, they thought they were privileged because they work here. Well, I've been working for the city, so such and such years, so the city owes me. And my response would say the city of Norman doesn't owe us anything. We're just blessed to have a good job, to make good money, and we support our families. So we ought to be thanking the city of Norman for what they've done for us. And that's what I've always been thankful what the city of Norman has done for me and my family, because they've given me a good salary. They've given me good benefits and all that I need to support my family. And so our culture has changed here, how we deal with, how we think about what we do here, because I say this is the city of Norman has entrusted us with their highest expense in this treatment plant, as far as the budget and what we actually do here and the amount of money. I say they just spent $63 million to make sure we got the stuff that we can do our jobs. And that was the highest capital project in Norman's history. And they did that so we can do our jobs better. And so my guys being proud of that and seeing that a lot of our issues with treatment of wastewater is gone now, and that they can do a lot other things instead of worry about equipment that was 50, 60 years old that was getting close to breaking down. Then they see all that now. So, our culture here is to be humble, teachable, and available. Those are the first two. And that's what I started teaching.
I like that. I like
We
that.
had to start with humble, because a lot of the employees here were not humble. They thought the city owed them. And then I had to get that out there. And then teachable, because I said the only way to get promoted, things of that sort, you have to be teachable. You have to be able to learn. And then be available. So when we need you, so I don't have an issue with calling an employee and asking them to come in, things of that sort. Because that's the culture that over the last 10 years that I've tried to build here. And
Well, I think
if we got issues, HR don't hear from us a lot, because we take care of that here. So we won't have to be dealing with stuff like that. And
yeah.
so I've tried to be a servant leader, serve my people. That's why I'm at work today. I'm not here today because I have to be. I could be at home too. But I have people here that needed my support today, because I knew us going into this hard freeze, that they're gonna have questions for me, and for me to be here with them, shoveling snow off the sidewalk, things of that sort, then they're gonna like that. And so that's why I came to work, because I'm a servant. I'm their servant. And I'm also the servant of our ratepayers. So I'm always thinking about how can I do things better for the residents of Norman and our ratepayers. Do we really need to spend that money on that? Could we do something better? Could we save money here, things here? We got different programs going on here. We're trying to save from our solar energy and indirect power reuse and all those things to help the city in the future. So we spend a lot of time talking about that.
Steve, I think you've been very successful with creating this culture, because I've toured the water reclamation facility many times, and everyone's so enthusiastic about what they do. It's refreshing. So well done, sir.
Thank you.
Anthony.
Well, one thing that each of the panel members talked about, something related to money, something related to finances, touched on what they do. And just to understand that the finances touch on everything. What I heard Steve say about that $63 million treatment plant, well, that was also the largest debt issuance in Norman's history until the $72 million general obligation bond for street improvements. And finances touch all of that. But what I will say is my proudest moment with the city of Norman had to do with the merger of the town of Hall Park into the city of Norman. And for some reason, I was given that project to coordinate that and head that up. And I was like a sheep being thrown to the wolves with all of the community meetings that were held in the former town of Hall Park, because those folks weren't real happy about this idea of having to be a part of Norman. It involved the legal department, it involved finances, it involved debt issuance, it involved, all sorts of things, and pulling all of that and coordinating all of that, to the extent that ultimately the citizens of the town of Hall Park voted, 95% of them voted to dissolve their town. and the city of Norman passed an ordinance to annex Hall Park into Norman. And now one of the things that really makes me mad is this idea that there is still a town of Hall Park on the map of Oklahoma. It does not exist anymore. That's part of Ward 6 in Norman now, and that's a proud thing for me. One thing I would say, just wrapping up about Black History Month that I did not mention, I think Norman needs to celebrate its Black history a lot more. There shouldn't be anybody in Norman who does not know who Alois Scipio Fisher is. Why isn't there a Martin Luther King Avenue in Norman? Why isn't there a Thurgood Marshall Avenue in Norman? Because Norman's history has been forwarded and touched. Norman has touched the national history through those folks, and you should be celebrating that, Norman. You should have, there's an Alois Scipio Fisher Garden on the OU campus, but that case happened in Cleveland County Courthouse. And so why isn't there something to commemorate that? Why isn't there Martin Luther King Avenue? I just think Norman needs to celebrate its Black history a lot more.
Thank you for that. I'm always looking to improve in that area, and I always love when I get real suggestions, not just go improve. You actually gave us things we can work on. And luckily, we have a Chief Diversity and Equity Officer to help us with that. So I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia to close this out. Oh, I want to say thank you real quick. One more time. Thank you all. You're awesome. You're fabulous. I really enjoyed tonight. Okay, Cynthia.
Oh, thanks so much, Mayor Clark. And, thank you all for your time, to the panel, for sharing your stories, for sharing from the heart. There were so many moments where we got to hear, of your business, your professional side, right, and how you got there. But there was so much of the personal side of you and your families. And, I think that's one of the things that we need to really bring to light. And thank you again, Mayor Clark, for just really pulling this together, because we need to hear that so that others can see, what the perseverance story is, and also to encourage, those out there that may want to see themselves in the city of Norman, in their careers or their families, etc. And also for opportunities for us getting better as a community. As Anthony, you just stated, there's plenty of room for us to do so. But I just really wanted to just say thank you, and also share with those listening to our audience that this is just one opportunity for us to get out the message. You heard various comments made of Black History Month and how important it is for you to do the research yourself. In Deputy Chief Jackson's own words, go out and do the research, go out and become, more educated in the topics. And so for that, we've placed various links on the City of Norman website where you can identify books, identify public lectures that are going on. In fact, next week on February 23rd, there will be an amazing public lecture put together by Dr. Carlos Hill from the University of Oklahoma, chair of the African American Studies Department, that's going to focus on the Tulsa Race Massacre. And so, it's those type of things that are part not only of just national history, but our own Oklahoma history, which is so important. So let's have more of these discussions, more of this opportunity to learn and really come together through understanding our personal perseverance stories and really just the humanity side of how we can get to a better place. So thank you so much for joining us, Mayor Clark. Thank you for leading the discussion, and for all of our panelists, which really gave us a lot to think about.
And if you watching at home enjoyed this, mark your calendars for Monday, March 8th. That's International Women's Day. And we're going to have another panel similar to this featuring some of our female employees. So tune in for that. Thanks, everyone.